Jake Morrison looked out at the dark space from his ship's main window and saw something that should not be there. The thing was big and metal and old, spinning slowly like a dead whale in the cosmic ocean. His ship Terra Nova had been flying through this empty part of space for 3 weeks, looking for new planets that humans might live on someday. They had not expected to find anything made by people out here. "Captain, you need to see this," said Lisa Hayes from her science station. She was the ship's expert on old things and alien stuff. Her fingers moved fast over the control buttons as numbers and pictures filled her screen. "This thing is really old, maybe thousands of years, but the metal is human metal, Captain. The computer says it came from Earth." Morrison walked over to look at her screen. This was very strange. Humans had only been flying in space for about 400 years. Before that, they were stuck on Earth. The Galactic Council had built a big energy wall around their solar system. 300 years ago, they said humans were too violent and dangerous to let out into the galaxy. Since then, humans could only fly around their own sun and planets. "How old did you say it was?" Morrison asked. "At least 5,000 years, maybe more," Lisa said. "But that's impossible. Humans were not even building metal tools 5,000 years ago, let alone spaceships." Ryan Burke came over from his weapons station. He was Morrison's second in command and had been a soldier before he became a space pilot. His face looked worried as he read the numbers on his screen. "Captain, this thing has guns. Big guns. Weapons I have never seen before. The power readings are off the charts." Morrison felt a cold feeling in his stomach. If this thing was really human and really that old, then everything they knew about human history was wrong. The Galactic Council had always told them that humans were new to spaceflight. They said humans were like children who needed to learn how to be peaceful before they could join the galaxy. "Can we get inside it?" Morrison asked. "There's a docking port on the side," Ryan said. "Looks like it was made for human ships. The computer can match our ship to it." Morrison thought for a moment. This could be dangerous. The thing could be a trap or have some kind of automatic defense system. But it could also have answers to questions humans had been asking for 300 years. Why had the galaxy really locked them away? Why were they so afraid of humans? "Do it," he said, "but keep our weapons ready." The Terra Nova moved slowly toward the big metal object. As they got closer, they could see writing on its hull. The letters were in old Earth language, but they could still read them. TSM Defender was written in big white letters on the side. Below that were symbols that looked like military marks. "TSM," Lisa said quietly, "Terran Stellar Marines." "I've seen those symbols in old Earth museums. They were soldiers from before the time of the Galactic Council. They docked with the object and Morrison led a team inside. The air was still good to breathe, which meant the thing had been taking care of itself for thousands of years. The hulls were built for humans, but they were bigger and stronger than anything humans built now. Everything looked like it was made for war. They found the main control room and Lisa connected her computer to the old systems. Information flowed across her screen in languages that were mostly human but different from modern Earth talk. Pictures showed star maps with human bases on planets that the galaxy said had always been empty. Then something amazing happened. A blue light filled the room and the shape of a person appeared in the air. It was a human man in heavy armor with the same military symbols they had seen outside. He was big and strong-looking, with scars on his face and tired eyes. "If you are seeing this message," the light man said, "then humanity has forgotten what it really was. We were not traitors or peacemakers. We were the sword and shield of the galaxy. When the great darkness comes back, remember what we were. Remember that we stood guard while others slept. The files in this ship will tell you the truth about your past. Use this knowledge well. The galaxy will need its warriors again." The light man disappeared and the room became quiet. Morrison and his team looked at each other with wide eyes. This changed everything. Humans were not new to space. They had been out here for thousands of years, and they had not been peaceful. Explorers, they had been soldiers. "Captain," Lisa said in a small voice, "there are hundreds of these ships out there. The star maps show human military bases on planets across the whole galaxy. We were everywhere. Morrison looked at the data, flowing across the screens. Pictures of huge battles, weapons that could destroy planets, and always humans fighting against something dark and terrible. Something that came from the empty spaces between galaxies. "Get all this information copied," he told Lisa. "Earth needs to know about this. The galaxy has been lying to us about who we really are." As the Terra Nova flew away from the ancient ship, Morrison wondered what other secrets were hidden in the dark spaces between the stars. The news from the Terra Nova hit Earth like a bomb. President Maria Rodriguez sat in her office reading the reports for the third time, and each time they seemed more impossible. Ancient human ships with weapons that could crack moons. Star maps showing human colonies on worlds the galaxy claimed had always been empty. Most shocking of all, evidence that humans had once been the galaxy's military force. Dr. Sam Foster was the first expert to arrive at Earth Command. He had spent his whole life studying galactic history, and now everything he thought he knew was wrong. The files from the ancient ship told a story that the Galactic Council had hidden for thousands of years. "Look at these battle reports," Foster sighed, pointing to his screen. "Humans fighting something called the Void Hunters. These things came from dark space between galaxies and 8 entire solar systems. Every report shows humans as the last line of defense. Helen Carter had been Earth's ambassador to the galaxy for 10 years. She had always wondered why the other alien races seemed so nervous around humans. Now she was starting to understand. The galaxy remembered something that humans had forgotten. "We need to take this to the Galactic Council," Carter said. "They have to explain why they hid this from us." Meanwhile, more human ships were finding ancient ruins across known space. The exploration ship Aurora found massive defense platforms. Around Kepler 442b, the weapons were still working after 5,000 years. Captain Diana West reported that the platforms had enough firepower to defend an entire solar system on Proxima Centauri C. Diggers found underground bunkers filled with weapons and armor. The equipment was designed for humans, but humans who were bigger and stronger than anyone alive today. Dr. Alex Turner, Earth's best genetic scientist, studied the armor and made a scary discovery. "This armor is designed for human bodies, but not modern human bodies," Turner told the Earth Command meeting. "The people who wore this equipment were stronger, faster, and tougher than we are. It's like they were built for war." Turner had been doing secret tests on human volunteers. What he found changed everything. Hidden in human DNA were genetic codes that had been sleeping for thousands of years. When he activated them, the changes were amazing. People became stronger and faster. Their minds worked better under pressure. They could see in the dark and heal from injuries that should have killed them. "We're not just descended from warriors," Turner said. "We are warriors. Our ancestors changed our DNA to make us into living weapons." Steve Martinez was one of the first to volunteer for the genetic activation process. Before the treatment, he was a normal security guard. After it, he could lift a car over his head and run faster than any human in recorded history. But the biggest change was in his mind. Peaceful thoughts were replaced by tactical thinking. He saw every room as a battlefield and every person as either an ally or a threat. "It's like I was asleep my whole life," Martinez said. "Now I'm awake, and I remember what I'm supposed to be." The energy barrier around Earth's solar system was getting weaker. Human scientists had noticed it months ago, but thought it was just normal decay. Now they wondered if it was supposed to weaken. Maybe their ancient ancestors had built it as a timer, keeping humans locked away until they were needed again. Small. Human ships started slipping through the barrier. They carried the ancient star maps and headed for planets that the galaxy said were empty. What they found proved that the maps were right. Ruined human cities on dozens of worlds. Weapons factories that could still build guns capable of destroying planets. And everywhere, signs of a war that had ended thousands of years ago, the galaxy was starting to notice. Alien ships began following human explorers, trying to see what they were looking for. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings. Ancient alien races who never spoke to anyone started sending messages to the council chambers. Ambassador Carter finally got her meeting with the Galactic Council. She brought the evidence from the ancient ships and the genetic research from Earth. The alien representatives sat in their crystal chairs and listened to her presentation. When she finished, the room was completely quiet. Chancellor Vexhai of the Zentoran Federation was the first to speak. His insect-like body clicked nervously as his translator turned his sounds into human words. "These claims are impossible," he said. "Humans were quarantined for primitive aggression. Your species was new to space when we found you." Carter activated her holographic display. Pictures of ancient human weapons filled the air above the council chamber. Star maps showing human military bases across the galaxy. Battle reports describing wars against enemies from dark space. "Then explain this," Carter said. "Explain why human military equipment is scattered across your space. Explain why every ancient alien race in this galaxy has legends about human warriors who saved them from destruction." An old Khazari delegate stood up from the back of the chamber. The insect-like aliens were known for keeping perfect historical records going back 50,000 years. When elder historian Kazathal spoke, even the powerful council members listened. "She speaks truth," the old alien said. "The humans were not quarantined for aggression. They were placed in protective isolation. The war against the Void Hunters cost humanity everything. 90% of their people died holding the line while the rest of us ran away to safety." The chamber erupted in angry chittering and electronic buzzing as the alien delegates argued. Some denied the old records. Others demanded to know why the truth had been hidden. But Carter could see fear in their glowing eyes and shifting colors. They remembered now. They remembered what humans really were. "The barrier around Earth is failing," Carter announced over the noise. "Humanity is waking up. The question you need to ask yourselves is simple. When the darkness comes back, do you want us as your guardians or your enemies?" The genetic awakening spread across Earth like wildfire. Dr. Turner's research had shown that the dormant warrior genes could be activated, naturally through stress or artificially through treatment. But what nobody expected was that once a few humans underwent the change, it began happening to others without any treatment at all. Lisa Chun was working late in her laboratory when it happened to her. She was studying artifacts from the ancient ships when suddenly her vision became sharper. Colors were brighter, and she could see details that had been invisible before. Her hearing improved so much that she could hear conversations 3 floors below her. Most importantly, her mind began working differently. Instead of thinking like a scientist, she started thinking like a tactician. "The weapons placement on these ships is perfect," she said to herself, looking at the ancient battle. "Cruiser designs. Every angle is covered, no weak spots. Whoever designed these understood war better than we understand peace." Similar changes were happening to humans across Earth. Farmers found themselves analyzing their fields like battlegrounds. Teachers began organizing their classrooms like military units. Even children started playing war games with sophisticated tactics that should have been beyond their understanding. President Rodriguez called another emergency meeting. The reports coming in from around the world were both exciting and terrifying. Crime rates had dropped to almost zero as potential. Criminals found themselves facing humans with enhanced reflexes and tactical awareness. But there were also reports of fights breaking out as newly awakened humans struggled to control their aggressive instincts. "We need to accelerate the program," General Patricia Kane said. She was one of the few humans who remembered the old military traditions. Her family had kept ancient warrior customs alive for generations. "Our people are changing whether we guide them or not. Better to control the process than let it happen randomly." King had been working with Turner to establish training centers where newly awakened humans could learn to control their enhanced abilities. The first center was built in the Nevada desert, far from civilian populations. What they discovered there changed everything they thought they knew about human potential. Ben Taylor had been a computer programmer before his awakening. Afterward, he could process tactical information faster than the most advanced military computers. He could track 100 different targets simultaneously and calculate the best way to neutralize all of them within seconds. It's not just that we're stronger or faster, Taylor explained to the researchers. We think differently now. Everything is a puzzle to be solved, a threat to be neutralized, or a resource to be protected. We see the world the way predators see it. The changes weren't just physical and mental. They were social too. Awakened humans naturally formed military-style groups with clear command structures. They communicated through a combination of words and subtle body language that unawakened humans couldn't understand. Most strangely, they seemed to share knowledge that none of them had learned. It's like genetic memory, Turner told Rodriguez. The awakening isn't just activating physical traits. It's unlocking thousands of years of accumulated tactical knowledge. These people know things about warfare that we haven't taught them. Meanwhile, human exploration ships were making more discoveries. The ship Endeavour, commanded by Captain Beth Johnson, found something on the ocean world of Aquatica Prime that made all their previous discoveries seem small. Hidden beneath 3 miles of ice was a massive facility still glowing with power after thousands of years. It's a preservation center, Johnson reported to Earth Command. There are thousands of human warriors in here, kept in some kind of suspended animation. The computer systems are still working and they're showing life signs. The facility's computer systems were more advanced than anything humans had built in the modern era. When Johnson's team connected their equipment to the ancient computers, they found detailed records of the last great war against the Void Hunters. The humans in the preservation chambers were veterans of that conflict, kept in stasis until they were needed again. The computer says they were put to sleep after the victory, Johnson said. They were promised that they could rest until the darkness returned. The system has been monitoring space for signs of Void Hunters for 5,000 years. Dr. Foster studied the records from Aquatica Prime and made a disturbing discovery. The war against the Void Hunters followed a pattern. The creatures would appear from dark space, consume entire civilizations, then disappear back into the void. They always returned, usually after periods of 5,000 to 10,000 years. According to these records, we're overdue, Foster told Earth Command. The last attack was 6,000 years ago. If the pattern holds, they should already be here. Earth's military leaders began preparing for the worst. The ancient weapons factories hidden beneath Earth's surface were reactivated. Shipyards that had been dormant for millennia came back to life, building vessels designed with technology that modern science could barely understand. The new ships were different from anything humans had built before. They were bigger, more heavily armed, and they seemed to respond to their crew's thoughts rather than manual controls. Captain Morrison, promoted to admiral after his discovery of the first ancient ship, was given command of the new flagship Valiant. It's like the ship knows what I want before I do, Morrison reported after his first test flight. The weapons target automatically, the shields adjust to incoming threats without being told, and the navigation system plots courses that I would never have thought of but that make perfect tactical sense. The awakened humans took to the new ships like they had been born for them. Crews worked together with an efficiency that seemed impossible. Orders were often unnecessary because everyone seemed to know their role instinctively, but the most significant change was happening to Earth itself. The ancient defense systems buried beneath the planet's surface were activating. Massive energy collectors hidden in the Earth's core began drawing power from the sun. Orbital weapons platforms that had been disguised as asteroids for thousands of years started moving into defensive positions. Earth isn't just a planet, Kane realized as she studied the activation reports. It's a fortress. Our ancestors turned our entire world into a military base. The energy barrier around the solar system finally collapsed completely. For the first time in 300 years, human ships could travel freely throughout the galaxy. But instead of celebration, there was only preparation. The awakened humans could sense something that normal humans couldn't. Something dark was coming from the empty spaces between galaxies. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching his fleet take formation around Earth. 50 ships crewed by enhanced humans, armed with weapons that could destroy planets, powered by technology that merged ancient knowledge with modern innovation. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting unusual readings from the dark matter sensors. Something big is moving in the void between galaxies." Morrison felt something deep in his enhanced mind, a warning passed down through generations of genetic memory. The darkness was returning, just as the ancient records had predicted. Humanity had awakened just in time to face an enemy that had been waiting in the void for 6,000 years. The human ship Aurora reached the edge of Kazari space 3 weeks after the barrier around Earth collapsed. Captain Diana West had volunteered for this mission because the Kazari were known as the galaxy's record keepers. If anyone had the truth about humanity's past, it would be them. The Kazari homeworld of Kefmer looked like a giant insect hive made of crystal and metal. Millions of the insect-like aliens lived in towers that reached into the clouds. When the Aurora requested permission to land, the response came immediately. The Kazari had been waiting for humans to return. Elder historian Kazathil met Captain West at the landing platform. He was ancient even by Kazari standards, his chitin shell scarred by centuries of life. Through neural translation devices, he spoke directly into West's mind. "Your return has been prophesied for 6,000 years, Kazathil said. The old records speak of the day when humanity would awaken and take up their weapons again. That day appears to have come." The Elder led West and her team deep into the planet's archives. The Kazari had kept perfect records for 50,000 years, storing everything in crystal matrices that could last forever. What they showed the humans explained everything about their forgotten past. "Your species was not like the others," Kazathil explained as holographic displays filled the chamber. "While we built cities and traded goods, you built weapons and trained for war. You seem to know that something terrible was coming from the dark spaces between galaxies." The records showed ancient human colonies spread across the entire galaxy. Unlike other species who built for comfort and beauty, humans built everything like a fortress. Their cities had walls and weapons. Their ships carried enough firepower to fight small wars. Even their farming colonies had orbital defense platforms. "The other species thought you were paranoid," Kazathil continued. "They complained that humans were too violent, too ready for war. The Galactic Council of that time tried to force you to disarm. You refused." Lieutenant Eric Palmer, West's tactical officer, studied the battle records with growing amazement. The ancient humans had developed weapons and strategies that seemed impossible. Ships that could phase between dimensions to avoid enemy fire. Soldiers in armor that let them fight in the vacuum of space. Weapons that could fire through hyperspace to hit targets in other star systems. "How did they learn to fight like this?" Palmer asked. "They learned from the enemy," Kazathil replied. "The first Void Hunter attacks began 8,000 years ago, small raids from dark space, testing the galaxy's defenses. Most species never even noticed them. Entire colonies would simply vanish and everyone assumed it was equipment failure or natural disasters. The records showed that humans were the first to realize what was really happening. They tracked the disappearances and found the pattern. Something was hunting the galaxy's civilizations, taking them one by one. The humans tried to warn the other species, but nobody believed them. So you prepared alone," Kazathil said. "You turned your entire species into a military force. You built weapons that could fight an enemy that existed partially outside normal space and time. When the great invasion finally came, you were ready." Captain West felt a chill as she watched the battle records from the Great War. The Void Hunters had emerged from dark space in numbers beyond counting. They were creatures of living darkness that consumed entire solar systems to fuel their advance. Regular weapons passed through them without effect. Only human weapons, designed specifically to fight interdimensional enemies, could hurt them. The war had lasted for 300 years. Billions of humans died holding defensive lines while other species evacuated entire sectors of the galaxy. Human ships fought battles in dimensions that normal matter couldn't even enter. Human soldiers wore armor that let them exist partially outside reality so they could engage the enemy on equal terms. 90% of humanity died in that war, Kazathil said softly. Your species sacrificed almost everything to save the rest of us. When the last Void Hunter was driven back into dark space, the survivors were exhausted. They asked only for rest. The record showed what happened next. The surviving humans were placed in stasis chambers on hidden worlds throughout the galaxy. Their weapons were sealed away. Their colonies were abandoned and forgotten. The energy barrier around Earth was built to keep the remaining human population isolated until they were needed again. The galaxy agreed to forget, Kazathil explained. It was easier to pretend that the war never happened than to remember the price that was paid. Your species was rewritten in history as primitive aggressors who had to be contained. The truth was hidden because the truth was too terrible to remember. Meanwhile on Earth, General Kane was leading the awakening of the preserved warriors from Aquatica Prime. The first to emerge from stasis was Colonel David Stone, a veteran of the final battle against the Void Hunters. When he saw how humanity had changed during their long isolation, his reaction was one of deep sadness. We became peaceful, he said, studying reports of modern human civilization. We forgot how to fight. We forgot why fighting was necessary. But Stone was amazed by the genetic awakening process. The modern humans were becoming something even more advanced than the ancient warriors had been. The peaceful centuries had allowed the warrior genes to evolve and improve. You're stronger than we were, Stone told the newly awakened humans. Faster, smarter, more adaptable. The peaceful years weren't wasted time, they were preparation. Dr. Turner's research had revealed that the genetic modifications made to humanity went deeper than anyone had realized. The ancient humans had not just created warriors, they had created a species that could adapt to any threat. The peaceful centuries had allowed new abilities to develop that would be crucial in the coming war. We're not just reverting to our old nature, Turner explained to Earth Command. We're evolving into something new. Something that can fight enemies that haven't been seen for 6,000 years. Back in Kazari space, Captain West received disturbing news from their deep space sensors. The Void Hunters were returning. Dark matter readings showed massive movement in the spaces between galaxies. The enemy that had been defeated 6,000 years ago was coming back, and they were bringing reinforcements. How long do we have? West asked Kazathil. According to our calculations, the first scouts will arrive within months, the ancient alien replied. The main force will follow within a year. This time, they will be prepared for human weapons. This time, they will not be caught off guard. The Elder led them to another archive chamber where the most secret records were kept. Here were the final messages from the last human commander of the ancient war, General Patricia Kane's ancestor, Admiral Sarah Kane. If you're reading this, the holographic message said, then the Void Hunters have returned and humanity has awakened once more. The enemy learns from each defeat. They will be stronger this time, more prepared, but so are we. The genetic modifications we made to our species were not just for this war, but for all the wars to come. The message continued with detailed instructions for awakening ancient weapon systems and mobilizing humanity's hidden military assets. But the most important part was a warning about what the Void Hunters had become during their time in dark space. They will not just consume matter this time, Admiral Kane's message explained. They have learned to consume reality itself. They will try to unmake the universe and replace it with void. Only humanity can stop them, because only humanity was designed to fight in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Captain West looked at her crew and saw the same determination that had driven their ancestors to sacrifice everything for the galaxy. The peaceful centuries were over. Humanity was remembering what it was meant to be. Send a message to Earth, she ordered. Tell them the Void Hunters are coming and we need to prepare for a war unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. The first Void Hunter scouts appeared near the Andromeda Gateway exactly as the ancient records had predicted. Deep space monitoring stations detected them as tears in reality itself, dark wounds in the fabric of space that seemed to absorb light and matter. Admiral Morrison watched the readings from the bridge of the Valiant and felt his enhanced senses screaming warnings. "They're not like anything we've fought before," reported Lieutenant Commander Rachel Barnes, his chief science officer. She had been one of the first humans to undergo the complete genetic awakening, and her enhanced mind could process sensor data that would overwhelm normal humans. "They exist partially outside our dimension. Our regular sensors can barely detect them." The Galactic Council's response to the Void Hunter appearance was immediate panic. Fleet Admiral Zeth Carr of the Andromedan Defense Force ordered his ships to intercept the intruders. What happened next proved that the galaxy had learned nothing from the ancient war. The Council fleet consisted of 200 ships armed with the most advanced weapons the peaceful galaxy could build: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors were unleashed against the Void Hunter scouts. Every shot passed through the enemy without effect. The dark creatures absorbed the energy and grew larger. Then the Void Hunters began to feed. The first ship to disappear was the flagship Harmony. One moment it was firing its full arsenal at the enemy, the next it was simply gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just erased from existence as if it had never been built. "All ships, retreat." Immediately, Admiral Zeth Carr ordered, but it was too late. The Void Hunters had tasted matter and energy from this dimension. They began to spread, consuming everything they touched. Within hours, the entire Andromeda Gateway system was gone. Leaving only empty space where 3 inhabited planets had existed, the news reached Earth within days, carried by the few ships that had escaped the massacre. President Rodriguez convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. The peaceful galaxy that had quarantined humanity for being too violent was now begging for help against an enemy they couldn't fight. 60 billion people, General, Kane said quietly as she read the casualty reports. Gone in 6 hours. The Galactic Council's entire defensive fleet destroyed without damaging a single enemy scout. Admiral Morrison had been studying the sensor records from the battle. His enhanced tactical mind could see patterns that normal humans would miss. The Void Hunters were not just randomly destructive. They were testing the galaxy's defenses, learning how to fight in this dimension after 6,000 years in the void. "They've evolved," Morrison told the Council. "The ancient records show Void Hunters that were dangerous but could be fought with the right weapons. These new ones are something else. They've learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Dr. Turner had been working around the clock with the ancient technology found in the preservation facilities. The weapons that had once defeated the Void Hunters needed to be rebuilt and improved. But what he discovered made the situation even more desperate. "The old weapons won't work," Turner announced to the shocked Council. "The Void Hunters have adapted. They've developed immunity to the dimensional weapons that defeated them before. We need something completely new." On Aquatica Prime, the awakened ancient warriors were training with the newly enhanced humans. Colonel Stone watched in amazement, as modern humans demonstrated abilities that far exceeded what the old warriors could do. But he also saw that they lacked the tactical knowledge that came from fighting in interdimensional war. "You're stronger and faster than we ever were," Stone told the trainees. "But strength means nothing against an enemy that can exist outside reality. You need to learn to think in dimensions that don't have names." The training was unlike anything in modern military doctrine. Humans learned to fight with weapons that could fire through hyperspace. They practiced tactics for battles in dimensions where physics worked differently. Most importantly, they learned to use their enhanced minds to perceive enemies that existed. Partially outside normal space. Jake Morrison, newly promoted to Fleet Admiral, took command of Earth's rapidly expanding military. The ancient shipyards were working at full capacity, building vessels that combined prehistoric technology with modern innovations. The new ships were more than just weapons platforms. They were designed to carry enhanced humans into dimensions where normal matter couldn't survive. "Every ship needs a crew that can think in multiple dimensions," Morrison explained to his commanders. The Void Hunters don't just exist in our space. They can attack from angles that shouldn't exist. We need crews that can fight in places that have no geometry. The awakening had spread to every human in the solar system. Children born after the genetic activation began were different from the start. They could see things that others couldn't, sense patterns in reality that escaped normal perception. Dr. Turner studied these new children and made a startling discovery. They're not just enhanced humans, he told President Rodriguez. They're something entirely new. The genetic changes are accelerating with each generation. These children can perceive 7 dimensions simultaneously. Meanwhile, the Void Hunters were spreading throughout the galaxy. The Zentaran Federation fell within weeks, their crystalline cities consumed by creatures that fed on the structure of reality itself. The Aquarian Empire's oceanic worlds were drained of all matter, leaving empty space where water planets had existed for millions of years. Ambassador Carter was on Nexus Prime when the evacuation order came. The capital of galactic civilization was being abandoned as the Void Hunters approached the core systems. The alien refugees fled in ships barely capable of faster-than-light travel, carrying what little they could save from civilizations that had stood for millennia. "Where will you go?" Carter asked Chancellor Vexhai as he prepared to board a refugee ship. "Toward human space," the alien leader replied. "It seems that only humans ever learned how to fight these creatures. Perhaps you can teach us what we should have learned 6,000 years ago." On Earth, General Kane received the most important message in human history. The ancient defense protocols built into the planet's core were activating. Weapons systems that had been dormant for millennia were coming online. The entire solar system was transforming into a fortress designed for interdimensional warfare. "The Sol defense grid is operational," Kane reported to the Council. "Energy collectors are drawing power directly from the sun. Orbital weapons platforms are moving into position. Earth's moon has revealed itself to be a massive weapons platform. But the most significant development was happening to the enhanced humans themselves. The stress of preparing for interdimensional war was triggering further genetic changes. Humans were developing abilities that their ancient ancestors never possessed. They could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, fight enemies in spaces that had no physical laws, and use weapons that fired thoughts instead of energy. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant as his fleet took position at the edge of the solar system. Behind him, Earth glowed with the energy of weapons that could crack the foundations of reality. Around him, enhanced humans prepared to fight a war that would determine whether the universe continued to exist. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors are detecting massive Void Hunter formations entering this sector. They'll be here within days." Morrison felt the weight of 6,000 years of human history on his shoulders. His ancestors had sacrificed everything to give the galaxy a chance to survive. Now it was his turn to stand guard against the darkness between the stars. "All ships prepare for interdimensional combat," he ordered. "Remember what we're fighting? For not just human survival, not just galactic civilization, but the right of reality itself to exist." The final battle began in the Nexus system, heart of galactic civilization. Admiral Morrison watched from the bridge of the Valiant as 100 billion Void Hunters emerged from dark space like a cancer spreading across the stars. The creatures had evolved beyond anything the ancient records described. They were no longer just interdimensional predators. They had become living tears in reality itself. General Kane stood beside Morrison, her enhanced senses reading battle data that flowed directly into her consciousness. The ancient warriors from the preservation chambers had integrated perfectly with the newly awakened humans. Together they formed a military force that thought and moved as one organism designed for war. "They're bigger than before," Kane observed, as the Void Hunters spread across the system. "Each one is the size of a moon, and they're bringing the void with them. They're not just consuming matter anymore. They're unmaking the space between atoms." The galaxy's evacuation was nearly complete. Millions of refugee ships fled toward the outer rim, carrying the survivors of civilizations that had stood for Millions of years. The Galactic Council had finally learned the truth about humanity's role in the cosmic order. They were not the galaxy's prisoners. They were its guardians. Captain Diana West commanded the destroyer Aurora as it phased between dimensions to strike at Void Hunter flanks. Her crew had learned to fight in spaces where geometry meant nothing and time moved backward. The ship itself had been enhanced with technology that let it exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "Target the dimensional anchors," West ordered, as her weapons officer lined up shots that would travel through hyperspace to hit enemies that existed partially outside reality. "If we can cut them off from the void, they become vulnerable to conventional weapons." The human fleet numbered only 3,000 ships, but each vessel was crewed by enhanced humans who could think faster than the most advanced computers. They moved in perfect coordination, executing battle plans that adapted to enemy tactics faster than the Void Hunters could respond. Dr. Turner had solved the weapon problem just hours before the battle began. The new interdimensional cannons didn't fire energy or matter. They fired focused reality, imposing the laws of physics on creatures that existed outside those laws. When the weapons hit, Void Hunters were forced to become solid and vulnerable. "Fire!" Morrison ordered, and 3,000 ships unleashed weapons that turned void into matter and darkness into light. The first wave of Void Hunters writhed as reality was imposed upon them. For the first time in the war, the creatures of darkness began to die, but the enemy adapted quickly. The remaining Void Hunters began to merge, combining into larger entities that could resist the reality weapons. They reached toward the center of the system where Nexus Prime hung in space, its billions of inhabitants watching their own destruction approach. Colonel Stone led the boarding parties that attacked the largest Void Hunters directly. His enhanced humans wore armor that let them exist in the same impossible spaces as their enemies. They fought with weapons that fired thoughts and moved through dimensions that had no names. "Remember," Stone told his warriors as they prepared to enter spaces where human minds shouldn't be able to function, "we're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for the right of existence itself to continue. These things want to return the universe to the void it came from." The battle raged for 7 days across multiple dimensions. Human ships fought in spaces where cause came before effect and where the future could attack the past. Enhanced human warriors boarded enemy vessels that existed in states of reality that normal matter couldn't touch. On the 4th day, the Void Hunters revealed their ultimate weapon. They began to unravel the fundamental forces that held atoms together. Stars started to dim as the strong nuclear force weakened. Planets cracked as gravity fluctuated wildly. The very foundations of physics were under attack. "They're trying to unmake the universe," Turner reported to Morrison. "If they succeed in breaking down the fundamental forces, everything will collapse back into the primordial void." Morrison made the hardest decision in human history. He ordered the activation of Earth's ultimate defense system. Hidden within the planet's core was a device built by the ancient humans, a weapon so powerful that using it would fundamentally change the nature of reality itself. "The Stellar Forge," Kane explained as the weapon powered up. "It converts the total energy output of our sun into a focused beam of pure creation. It doesn't destroy the enemy. It remakes them into something that can't exist in the void." The weapon fired on the 7th day, just as the largest Void Hunter began its final assault on Nexus Prime. A beam of concentrated reality struck the creature, forcing it to become completely solid and vulnerable. But the weapon did more than just affect its target. It sent waves of reinforced reality throughout the system, strengthening the laws of physics and making it impossible for Void Hunters to exist. The remaining creatures of darkness found themselves trapped in a universe where their interdimensional nature couldn't protect them. Human weapons that had been ineffective suddenly began to work. The tide of battle turned as the Void Hunters discovered what it meant to be vulnerable. Captain Beth Johnson led the final assault on the Void Hunter command entity, a creature the size of a small planet that had been coordinating the invasion. Her ship Endeavor phased directly into the creature's core, where her enhanced crew fought battles in dimensions that existed only in mathematical theory. "For Earth," Johnson said as she fired the killing shot that destroyed the last great void. "Hunter." "For the galaxy." "For everyone who sleeps safely because warriors stand guard in the dark." The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy forever changed. The refugee fleets returned to find their worlds restored by the reality waves from the stellar forge, but they also found that humanity had revealed its true nature to the universe. The peaceful explorers were gone, replaced by the guardians they had always been meant to be, the Galactic Council formally invited humanity to resume its ancient role as the galaxy's protectors. The energy barrier around Earth was replaced with a massive military academy where the best warriors from every species would learn to fight interdimensional threats. Admiral Morrison accepted the invitation with the understanding that humanity's burden had not ended. The Void Hunters might be defeated, but they were not the only threat that lurked in the dark spaces between galaxies. Other enemies would come, and humanity would be ready. "We are what we have always been," Morrison said in his address to the reformed Galactic Council. "We are the sword raised against the darkness and the shield that guards the light." The galaxy forgot what warriors looked like in peacetime, but the darkness beyond the stars never forgets. The ancient human motto was carved into monuments on 1,000 worlds, spoken at military ceremonies across the galaxy, and taught to children who would grow up knowing that their safety depended on those willing to fight for it. "We sleep, so others may dream." But some dreams, humanity had learned, required guardians who never truly slept at all. The warriors had returned to their eternal watch, and the galaxy was safe once more.